How's you going, boys? Mike here. Welcome back to Grampy's Workshop. Today we're going to be operating in the vice squad because my vice is not working. There's something wrong with the screw feed in it. Sometimes it'll tighten, sometimes it won't. Sometimes you can just pull the outside jaw just about right out of the vice. So we're going to strip her down and see what's wrong with it. Alright then, my vice is attached to the bench with some 13mm lag bolts, so I'm just going to pop those out, or pop them out, I hope, so I'm going to pop them out. Get out, here we go. So those two back ones were pretty long because they go right into 2x4s. And there, the vice is free. So now that I have it free, I'm going to loosen these swivel bolts here so that I can take the vice off the swivel base. So there's the swivel base, a couple of the square nuts over there. Now I'm going to take this front jaw right completely out. Doesn't seem to want to come all the way out. There's a bolt in here, right in there. And that holds the threaded part that the screw goes into, so I'm going to try and remove that. There. That bolt held that plate in there. Well, as it turns out, you just have to keep turning the screw and it will eventually turn that threaded plate off the end. So that's what I did. So now this should come out. There you go. So there's the parts for my vice. I'm not able to determine why it was slipping in the jaws here, why that was slipping. But anyways, what I'm going to do is clean everything all up good with some solvent, and we'll have a look, see if there's any damaged parts or pieces, and then we'll reassemble it. I've got her all cleaned up. I've cleaned out this fixed jaw, and I've cleaned out the movable jaw with the thread. I put some degreaser on that, got that cleaned up pretty good. The problem I was having with this was you could take the movable jaw and you could slide that in and out sometimes, and when you were tightening it up it seemed like it was slipping when it was coming up tight. Now this movable jaw goes in this opening and threads into this piece here, and this piece goes in the back of the stationary jaw and bolts on there. If you can see that as clear as I can make it. Just one sec, right there. Now the only thing I can figure is that this had come loose, but when I took it apart it wasn't loose. The bolt that holds it in place was still threaded in, but there's only a very few number of threads in the bottom of this that actually catch, so it might have just been in the hole enough to hold that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little Loctite on this bolt, and I'm going to put that through there and bolt that in to the fixed jaw. And then I can take my movable jaw and thread the threaded shaft into that, and then I think she should be good then. It usually doesn't take a lot of Loctite to make it work, so there's just a little touch on the end of the screws. I lost my cap to my Loctite, so I kind of made one there. And then I'm going to thread this in. See, there's only very little bit of thread of that catching. Okay, so there, that's in place and tightened up pretty good, but like there's only a couple of threads holding that, so I'm not sure. Okay, now we're going to try to thread this movable vice jaw in here. There she goes, pick that up pretty quick. And I discovered why this was so hard to get this out. The last couple of threads on the screw, the Acme thread is turned a little thicker, and I think that's by design so that you won't unscrew it. So we got the movable jaw. Sorry, we've got the movable jaw back in. So that looks like we got it. Other than some lubrication. Okay, I'm going to put some grease on this. That's what I was up to, isn't it? So, I was in Princess Auto one day and I found this. It's called Crazy Grease. Now, I don't know if it's any good or not, but it's supposed to be good for everything. It's waterproof and, you know, good for everything. So I use it for general purpose grease. So it's contaminated, like if you were wanting to put it on, say, a bearing or something, I wouldn't suggest that, because right now, I wouldn't use this grease on a bearing because I've contaminated this grease. You can see around the edge it's pretty well dirty in the can, so this is just like general purpose grease. Ideal for what I'm going to use it for right here, which is just to grease up this vice screw thread. I hope you can see what I'm doing. Open it. Can you tell it needs some grease? It's a little on the noisy side. So I'm going to grease up these tracks here too. So while I was screwing this movable jaw in and out, I found out what my problem was. Just in that little bit of time, this bolt came free because there's so few threads holding that in the base. You can see this is the part right here that's supposed to lock it in place, and that came right out. So I think that was my problem, so I'm going to have to get a longer bolt. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to put this movable piece, or the threaded section, in here. I'm going to put a little Loctite on this new bolt that I found. I don't have a very good, I should get new Loctite, but anyway, that's what I have for now. So I'm going to put that in there. And I'll thread that into the hole. And this bolt now is long enough to make good interference with the threaded hole, so that there's lots of thread in there. So I'll put that in and tighten it up. In fact, I think what I'll do is I'll just leave that a little bit loose right now until I can get the movable jaw threaded into it, and then I'll snug it up. And you'll see where that one just barely goes through the bottom of the vise, so that's going to work just great. So now I'll take the movable jaw, slide that in and start it. See if we can get her done. Oh, there we go. I think we got her that time. A little noisy going in, but anyhow. See if I can get in here with my wrench and tighten this now. Oh yeah. There, so that's tight. There, okay. going to put the base on the vise first. And the way I do that, make sure I'm going to get this right now. That's going to go on the bench that way, and the vise is going to go on it this way. So if I flip that like that, and flip that like that, that should be the right way. So that square bolt goes in there. This goes in from this side. And then this one goes on this side. So that guy goes in that way. So there's that side in, and that side is on. So we put this back in place, put our lag bolts back in. And I thought this was a lag bolt too, but it's not. It's a bolt and nut because it goes right through the tabletop. Then just snug goes up with a wrench. Pivot's good. Yeah. Good and tight. Makes a noise when you wind it in and out, but I guess that's what vices do sometimes. So the vise is all repaired, put back on the bench. Everything is back to the way it should be. Looks like the problem was that little bolt that held the female threaded portion to the stationary jaw would come loose and allow the movable jaw then to slide back and forth. And you couldn't tighten it up. It wasn't even working as a vise. So anyways, I found a longer bolt, put it in place with some Loctite, tightened it all up good. So I think that's a good solution we have there, and now my vise works, so that's always great too. So appreciate you watching. Click like if you like this video, and I love getting comments too, so don't be afraid to add a comment or two, and we'll talk to you.